The weight of a small life. Why most people never become great the comfortable cage. Daniel had a good life. And that was exactly the problem. Not good in the way that stirs the soul, good in the way that quietly sedates it. He had a steady paycheck that arrived every last Friday of the month without drama or uncertainty. He had a circle of friends who met every Saturday at the same bar, ordered the same drinks, and had the same conversations they had been having for 6 years. He had a routine so perfectly worn into the fabric of his days that he could live an entire week on autopilot without making a single conscious decision. From the outside, Daniel's life looked fine, comfortable, reasonable. From the inside, it felt like a room with no windows. He was 31 years old, and somewhere between 25 and now, something had quietly gone missing. Not stolen, nothing so dramatic. It had simply faded, the way ambition fades when it is never exercised. The version of himself that had once had fire, that had once sketched out grand plans in university notebooks and believed, with full sincerity, that he was meant for something significant. That version had grown thin and distant, like a song playing from another room. Daniel could barely hear it anymore. The slow poison of comfort. The tragedy of Daniel's life was not failure. It was the absence of any real attempt. He had ideas, good ones, if he was honest with himself. For 3 years, he had been sitting on a business concept in the sustainable packaging industry, a field he understood deeply from his supply chain job. He had done the research. He had run the numbers in quiet moments at his desk. He knew, with a certainty that lived in his gut, that the idea had merit. But he had never started. There was always a reason. The economy wasn't stable enough. He didn't have enough capital. He needed more time to prepare, more knowledge to acquire, more certainty to accumulate before he could responsibly take the leap. And so the idea sat in a folder on his laptop in the back corners of his mind, gathering the dust of permanent procrastination. What Daniel was experiencing had a name, though he didn't know it yet. It is the paralysis that comes not from fear of failure, but from fear of a more specific kind of loss, the loss of the possibility that things could be different. As long as he never truly tried, he could never truly fail. And as long as he hadn't failed, the dream remained intact, preserved behind glass like something precious, never risked, never tested, never real. He was protecting the idea from the very life it needed to survive. The funeral that changed everything. Daniel's Uncle Raymond died on a cold Thursday in November. Raymond had been the kind of man who filled every room he entered, loud, warm, perpetually in motion. But in his final years, something in him had grown heavy and quiet. He had spent the last decade speaking in past tense, referencing the business he should have started, the places he should have traveled, the version of himself he should have become. His regrets were so familiar to him by the end that he recited them like old prayers. At the funeral, Raymond's closest friend delivered a eulogy that rearranged something in Daniel's chest permanently. He said, quietly and without ceremony, Raymond had enough talent for 3 lifetimes, but he spent his whole life getting ready to use it. The room was silent. Daniel stared at the floor and felt those words move through him like cold water. He looked at the casket and understood, with sudden and terrible clarity, that he was watching a preview, not of death, but of a specific kind of unlived life. The life of permanent preparation. The life of almost. The life of one day, someday, when the conditions are finally right. He drove home in complete silence. And that night, alone at his kitchen table, Daniel opened his laptop and looked at the folder he had not touched in 8 months. He began to type. The unglamorous work of becoming. What followed was not a montage. There was no dramatic music, no sudden flood of resources, no universe conspiring to smooth the path before him. There was just Daniel, tired after full days of work, sitting at a kitchen table that was too small, teaching himself what he did not know, sending emails that went unanswered, enduring the long, humbling education that every beginner must receive. The first 6 months were defined almost entirely by obstacles. His initial manufacturer fell through. A potential investor met with him once and never responded again. A friend he had trusted with the idea dismissed it casually over dinner, and Daniel spent 3 days quietly wondering if the friend was right. But something had shifted in him at that funeral. Something load-bearing and permanent. He had seen clearly what waited at the end of the road he had been traveling, and that vision had made the discomfort of the new road feel not just bearable, but necessary. He kept a note on his wall. 3 words, written in his own hand. Get up again. Not, you are destined for greatness. Not, believe in yourself. Just the raw, unglamorous instruction that actually carries people through the difficult middle of any transformation. Get up again. And he did. Every time. What greatness actually looks like. 18 months after his uncle's funeral, Daniel's company processed its first commercial order. A modest contract with a regional food brand seeking sustainable packaging alternatives. It was not a headline. It was not a viral story. It was a single step that only looked small from the outside. From where Daniel was standing, it was the culmination of hundreds of quiet decisions to choose discomfort over safety, movement over preparation, action over the perfect conditions that were never going to arrive on their own. He was not yet wealthy. He was not yet widely recognized. By conventional measures of success, he was still early, still climbing, still far from the summit. But he was no longer the man in the comfortable room with no windows. He had broken something open, not just in his circumstances, but in himself. He had proved to himself that he was capable of beginning, of persisting, of surviving the long, uncertain middle that most people turn back from. And that knowledge, once earned, changes a person at a foundational level. You cannot unknow what you are capable of once you have lived it. Why most people never become great. This is the conversation that most motivational content avoids, because the truth is not always comfortable. Most people do not fail to become great because they lack talent. The world is overflowing with talented people living small lives. They do not fail because opportunity never arrived. Opportunity, in some form, arrives for almost everyone. They fail to become great for a reason far more ordinary and far more difficult to confront. They choose comfort over growth, consistently, until the choice becomes unconscious. It happens gradually, almost imperceptibly. Every time you choose the familiar path over the uncertain one, every time you silence the restless voice that is calling you toward something larger, every time you say, I'll start when things are better, you are casting a vote for smallness. Not dramatically, just quietly, one small retreat at a time. And the weight of a small life is not the weight of sadness. It is the weight of knowing, deep in the part of yourself that cannot be fully silenced, that you are capable of more than you are currently living. That weight accumulates. It becomes regret. And regret, as Raymond's life demonstrated so clearly, is the heaviest thing a person can carry to the end. The path away from that weight is not talent. It is not timing. It is a decision made daily in small moments, in the private choices no one else witnesses, to refuse the comfortable cage, to begin before you are ready, to get up one more time than you fall. Greatness is not a destination reserved for exceptional people. It is a standard of living, a commitment to the full use of what you have been given, in whatever arena you have been placed. A final word. You already know what you have been avoiding. You already feel the weight of the life you have been settling for. The question is not whether you are aware. The question is how much longer you are willing to carry that weight before deciding it costs too much. The comfortable cage is always open. You are not locked in. You have been choosing it day by day because it felt safer than the alternative. But safety, pursued above all else, is its own kind of slow surrender. The world does not need another person who almost became who they were supposed to be. It needs the full, committed, unapologetic version of you, built not in a moment of inspiration, but in the daily, unglamorous, deeply courageous decision to keep going. Your potential is not a promise from the universe. It is a responsibility to yourself. Honor it. The saddest words in any language are, I could have. Don't let them be yours.